Okay, so when you first start up Inkscape, you'll see a screen like this. Now, I'm just going to go with the default settings. This is where you can pick your theme, like dark, light, whatever. We're going to go with default, click Save, and then it tells you it's supported by users, blah, blah, blah. It's basically open source and it's free. But if you could shoot them a few bucks, that would help. We'll click on Thanks. And we're going to come in here to print. We're going to pick an A4. Now, you can have different formats, screen, video, whatever. And you can make different templates, but we'll just click A4. It usually takes about 5 seconds or more to load up, depending on how many fonts you have. The more fonts you have, the longer it seems to take to load. Now this is your page here. This is your A4 size. And what I'm going to do is hold down Control key and roll the mouse in and out, and it'll show you the size. Now we can use as much of this canvas here as we want. We can draw outside of here and not put it on here at all. So what you see in here is usually what you end up printing. There's actually different ways to do that. But if you notice here on the left, here's the toolbox. S is the shortcut key for the select tool. That's one of the first ones I'd recommend learning, is that select tool. Since there's nothing here yet, just a blank page, there's nothing to select. Let's draw a rectangle. If I look down here, I see fill and stroke, and it tells me what the colors are. Right now, there's nothing, so it's probably going to be black on black, since I reset this to show you guys. So I'm going to say, I'm going to pick green for my fill color. Then I'm going to come up here and I'm going to grab a rectangle and I'm going to draw a green rectangle. And if you look down here, you see it says fill and it says unset. Now, a shortcut key, or shortcut keys, I should say, is Control, Shift, and F. And it'll bring up this dialog box over here, which is fill and stroke. Now, I have this selected. Again, I'm going to Control and roll in. And I'm going to come over here to stroke paint. Now, if I don't want to stroke paint, I click on the X. But if I want to stroke paint, I click on here. Now, it's black right now. It's set it to default to black, but we don't really see it too much unless I roll in. And you can see it. The reason being is because the line's so thin. So stroke paint's the color, fills the inside color. Stroke style is how fat you're going to make that outside line. If I keep clicking on this, you'll notice it gets bigger and bigger. You can also make the corners on the end. You can make them round. You can make them angle. You can make them square. Whatever you want to do. Depends on that. So that's, if I wanted to change this color inside again, I would just simply come down and I would left click on the color I want. Go back to green. Same thing with the outside. If I wanted to change the outside, maybe I wanted to make that red, I would hold down Shift so that way it picks the stroke and I would hit that color, red. I'm going to go back to black for now. Okay, so now I'm going to roll out again a little bit. I'm going to come in here and I'm going to grab a circle. Now if I just drag and move around anywhere, I get an ellipse. If I want something round, I hold down Shift Control and then move it around. Then I'll get the round circle. I'm going to make the inside of that red. I'll click here. So that's red. Now if you notice, there's handles and dots around these things. We're not going to touch them for now, but we're going to hit S and go back to select. And you notice this one is underneath this one. If we wanted to move this up, now this isn't layers, but this is a way you can actually move them around. This would bring it to the top. This would bring it up one layer. We'll bring it to the top, and you can see it does that. Now, if I wanted this other one on top, I'd click on it, I'd bring it up. Same thing as far as going down. This will move it to the back. Now, this will be important when you do other things. Now, if you also notice, you see all these little handles around. That lets me resize the object. I can drag it across like this. I can drag it across like that. And always you can use Control Z to get back to what you were. If I click on the circle one more time again, you'll notice you'll see these handles. This will let me rotate. Now, I really don't do anything on a circle, but you can see we'll do it. I can stretch it and all that. Again, Control Z to go back. I'm going to hit S to come back to my select tool. Grab this one. This will be a better example. You can see how it scales in different directions. You can move around. Now, if I wanted to make it equal from the center, I would hold down Shift and Control, and I would drag it across like that. Okay. Now, these items, like I said, they don't have to be on this page. Since I have the select tool there, I'll just drag this off to the side, I'll click on that and I'll drag this off to the side. Now there's other objects you can make, like you can come in here and you can make a star. And click in here and we can draw a star. When I let go, you'll notice you'll see these different dots on here. They do different things. If I click on that node, I can move this star in and out. If I click on this, I can rotate it, I can spin, I can do whatever I need to do. I can change the number of corners. If I come up to this toolbar up here and I click on it, you can see how it's changing the number of stars. Again, I can come into that little node and I can drag it and I can twist it. I can make things like that, like a sawtooth almost. There's also, you can change it almost like to a pentagon, pentagram, whatever. You can do that kind of stuff. I'm going to come back to that because that looks kind of neat. There's all these different things up here you can set. You can try all them later. Now I'm going to come into this select tool again, drag that out of the way. You know what, let's change the color while we're at it. If you come down here, you can see there's different colors. If I roll the mouse, you can see it's going through all these different palettes, and you can actually change the palettes over here. My screen capture is in the way, but there's, well, this ellipsis, we might be able to get to it. There we go. And you can pick different palettes, different ranges of colors. Simple colors, more complex colors, all that. SVG, come in here, colors like that. And I think Inkscape default's what we started with, so we'll go back to that. Okay, now what we want to look at next is the Bezier tool. This is really cool. Bezier tool, if you click on it, I click once on a button and I drag. I didn't let go of the button yet. If you notice, I go like that. And I let go, I can get a curve. I want to get a straight line, I just simply click, 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 click. But if I want a curve, I hold down the button and I drag it. And I can make a curve. Now it'll fill with the last color we had selected. So what I want to do is I'm going to make that yellow inside there. Okay, now what we can do is we'll come into this node tool. This node tool N is going to be real important when you really get into drawing. You click on it and it makes everything into nodes. And if you look, I can drag, and you can see how you could, oops, I missed that. Click on it. Make sure you get on a node and drag it. You can see how you can change You can see how you can change the shape of things like that. And then you could add more nodes if you needed. You would just, I think you just double click. Yeah. And it'll add more nodes. But you can see where this is going. And then if you bring the nodes in closer, it makes it sharper. If you take them further away, it makes it more dramatic curve. And like say I wanted to do something here, I could double click there. I could drag that in there. I could drag the handle down for the top one. I could move it around. I could make pretty complicated shapes like that. Now something else that's kind of cool. We'll go back to the select tool either with S or clicking here. Come into this gradient tool. Gradients, oh, we got to go over fill first, sorry. If you come over here, there's different gradients you have. You have a flat color, you have a linear gradient, you have a radial gradient, and you have these other fancier ones meshing that. The two most common ones are going to be the linear gradient. So when you click on it, you can see how, what it did there. So we'll come in here and we'll make this one, click on it, and we'll make that an orange color. And then we'll come over here, click on that one, and we'll make that a yellow. Oops, I grabbed the wrong one. Control Z, it's your friend. So click in there, and then click on yellow, and you can see what it did there. And then you can adjust how much of an effect. And you can add more than that. There's ways you can actually put more colors in there. Like say I wanted that to be, I don't know, blue. Something like that. I grabbed the whole thing, sorry. But anyhow, you see how this works. This comes in here. Yeah, like that. And then you can adjust these. You can draw more things like that. And if you look over here, it created that gradient, and that's number. You can rename it to whatever you want. Double click on it, call it my gradient. Something like that. And then that way, if you want to use it for other things, if you want to come in here and do this, you can click on here and do my gradient, and then you can adjust it to whatever you need. I'm going to hold the control down. I'm going to drag, control down and drag across. And you can see how that gradient is. Now another gradient that's kind of cool, and we'll use this one for that. So I hit S for select, click in here. I'm going to use the radial gradient. You see what it did there? How it made it white on the outside, dark on the inside. Now, what I want to do is I'll come over to the gradient tool. I'll click on this, and I'm going to make that yellow. But if you notice down here, it's got some transparency, so we're going to kick that up. We're going to make that yellow. And down here, let's just make that full out red. And then you can adjust it by dragging these nodes up or down. See how it's making it kind of like an oval? Something like that. And then also, click on that, we'll drag it like this. I'm going to grab that center and drag it down like this. But you can see where this is going. If you worked at it, you could make, Control Z, you could make it a nice looking gradient. That's just a quick example of what the gradients can actually do. So that's that. That's fill and stroke. Oh yes, at the top you have your menu bar. Up here is where you do things like file. You can import images. You can actually bring in a bitmap and play around with it. You can do print from here. You can export it as different things. You can export a section, the page, whatever you want to export. There's also layers. We'll get into that in a bit. And then there's objects, things, different things you can do. A little bit I show you the raised top and all that. Modifications, you can flip it horizontally, vertically, whatever. Path is something we'll get into in a little bit. It's kind of neat what it does. You take objects, make them into paths, then you modify the paths. Text you can do all kind of stuff. You can make it follow curves, things like that. Filters, there's a lot of things you can do with filters, a lot of effects. So let's say we'll come in here, we'll grab this one, and we'll come into filters, and we'll do a drop shadow, a simple drop shadow. Drop shadow. Now, you can click on this live preview and it'll show you. You can see down there it made a drop shadow. Now, I'm going to kick up the blur radius some. See how it's blurry. And then the offset. Well, I don't want to kick back too far. We'll go back to there. Blur color, we could change the blur color if we wanted. We could make it blue or something. And then how dark it actually is. Kind of hard to see on that, but you see what I'm doing here. So, and then once you're happy with it, you click apply and close. If you click apply a couple times, it'll get darker and darker. But that's how you can add like effects and stuff like that. And there's extensions. There's all kind of crazy stuff you can do with extensions. They're pretty complicated. I only know a few of them, and they work really well though. Let's see, color palette. We went over the color palette. We'll go over layers in a bit. Tool options up top. I don't think I showed you that. Say I wanted this. We're going to go with inches. I'm going to change this over to inches, and that's something else. You can change the document settings at any time. So I'm going to go to inches, but I'm also going to do Shift, Control, and D, and it'll bring up the document. Here I'm going to change everything over to inches just to make it easy because everybody understands inches. So it'll be like that. And if you notice the top, the ruler changed. Now, another thing while I'm at it is I'll show you with these rulers. They're kind of neat. There's things called guides, and there's this stuff over here called snapping, which will make the nodes jump to each other, say, in case you want to line something. But one thing you can do right now, I rolled up a little bit. Say I want to make something down 2 inches. If you look on the left-hand side over here, I could set this to 2 inches. And I want to make it 2 inches in. I would come over here onto the ruler, left-click and drag, and come over and do this. Now I have that. Now there's a way with snapping. Nodes, alignment. There's an advanced section. This is where you can go and you can change all the stuff, bounding objects and everything. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come back here. I'm going to hit S, select. I'm going to drag this over. If I turn snapping on, you'll see it's indented. It jumps right to that part there. You have to be careful because if it grabs something else, it'll confuse it. Now I'm going to hold Control and roll in. You can see what it did there. It went to the center of that. So I want to go that way. I want to make it exactly that. Now that I have that, and if I look up here, I'm off by a few thousandths of an inch. I'm not going to worry about that. I'm going to make it 2 inches wide by 2 inches tall. There. Now, if I print this out, it's going to be 2 by 2 square. So that'll come out good. I'm going to hit the number 3 because I want to look at the whole. Oops, that's the object. Number 3 is for the object. 1 is for the whole page. So something like that. So you can see kind of where this stuff's kind of going. Now, we're going to go over layers. There's layer stuff down here at the bottom that tells you stuff. I don't use this all that much. What I do is Control, Shift, and L, and it'll bring up the layers. At least I thought it did. I got something running in the background. That's why it's on it. But anyhow, if you come over here, these different things will show you. This is align and distribute. You know what? Let's go over that next too, and then we'll get the layers. Layers is a little more complicated. Say I wanted to put this in the center of that. You know what? Let's do this instead. I want to put this in the center of that. So I click on that first. I click on that. Then I come over here to this align and distribute menu. And then it'll ask me what selection area relative to. Now, if I click on this first, I click on this next, I want the last selected, the last thing I selected, like that. Then I click on this, it centers it horizontally. I click on this, it centers it vertically. So I have those two objects centered. Now, say I wanted to make them together. There's a few ways to do it. One of the ways to do it is just simply group. I click on that, I click on that, I come up to Object and Group. I mainly use that Control G. Now those objects are grouped together. So when I grab them, they both move together. You can ungroup them. You just simply come up and you do Object, Ungroup. And it breaks them up again. Click off, click back in. There it is. I could move it up here, do this. I could do Object, Group. And then when I come back in and click on this, it drags them around again. So that's important to group and ungroup and all that. There's a lot more you can do with that, and we'll get to that later. But back to the layers. Layers is over here. Layers is kind of cool. Now everything we drew is on a layer. You can turn the visibility on and off. You can see these are grouped together. This path here is, I'll hit 3. It's that star looking thing. I can ungroup it. I can turn the whole layer off where you see nothing. Turn back on. Now another thing you can do is you can come in here and you can add layers. You can call it my layer. And I got that layer selected, the current layer. I'll come in here and I'll draw another box like this. Now it's on that layer. Hit S again to select. And I'm going to come into that layer and I'm going to turn it off. So you can do that. Now another thing, when we drag this across, you see that layer is on top, because if you're looking down on this is above that. Well, maybe I don't want that. Maybe I want to drag that layer down to here, if I can. All right, drag this layer up. It's a little tricky to do. I'm not real good with that part. But anyhow, you can see what happened here. That went above there. This whole layer went above that other layer. Again, I can turn it off. I can turn it on. So that's what that does. On the bottom right, and you can't really see it for my screen capture thing, is a zoom, where it tells you what the zoom is. I typically just hold down Control, roll in and out, and use the 1 key or the 3 key to zoom in and out. We went over with page borders. Yeah, on this screen you see there's the page borders. Something else we could want to do, I didn't do, is text. Come in here and we click on text, my first drawing. Now you can't really see it because the text is set so small. Same thing, I can click on this, or I can do Control Shift T and it comes up with a text. And I can pick, right now it's a 9 font size, which is small. If I click in there and then I hit apply, which I probably can't get to. Yes, I can get to it. Okay, so it came up with that. Now we're going to zoom in on that. And if you look, it's all black, probably because the stroke's really big. So if I come into stroke paint and I turn it off, I can see underneath. So obviously that's the problem. So we'll come back here, we'll turn stroke paint on, we'll come into stroke style, we'll kick it down, we'll make it, let's try 0.02. Yeah, you can see what it's doing there. I don't like the color of that text, but I'll make it yellow. Maybe I'll make it green or something like that. Whatever looks good. And then you can change the stroke color if you wanted. We could also come back in here to filters, shadow, drop shadow, like what we did before. We'll click on live preview. Always remember to click that on so you can see what's going on. Now that blur is set pretty big. Come into options here, blur radius. Let's set this. You'll have to try this for every size you use because they're different. We'll go 2 and we'll go 2. And then I'll come into the blur radius. I'll set that to 2 also. Oops. There. You see how it did that little bit of drop shadow? Now the blur radius, if I keep kicking it down, that shadow is going to get sharper and sharper. So we'll come down to 1, see what that looks like. And you can offset it even more if you want. We'll go up to 3, or you can simply type in 3. And like I said, as long as you do the live preview, always make sure you tab out of the numbers or it won't take them. And then when you're happy with that, you can click apply. If you hit apply a couple times, it's going to get darker and darker and darker. You see what it's doing there? So we'll close that up. I won't go any further with that. And then if you wanted to edit the text again, you could just click on the text tool and come in here and type in, and it keeps the effects. Also up top here, you can do justification, you can center it, spacing, the kerning, all the different things like that you can do up here. Like what I did over here, you can come in here and do, I don't know if that, yeah, there is a bold. We can make it bold. We can change it from point. There's a lot of things you can do. You can change the fonts, the font too. At least I thought you could up here. If not, you can come back over here to text, find the text you want. Let's see if we can get to that. Yeah, we can. You can see what that does. That's pretty much useless, but you can see what it does. And you got to make sure you got all the text selected, otherwise it won't take whatever. It's one other thing to look out for. So we'll hit 1. Oops, I hit I. I'm back on a text tool. Control Z. That's another thing too. You can close this side up if you want. Oops, right here. That'll bring those in and out. And you can toggle around between all these different dialog boxes and see what's going on. Now this export here, it gives you different options. I can do the document, which is whatever that is there, which is everything basically on the screen. I can do page, which is just that page we selected. Or if I have something selected, I can just do the selection and just export that. Then there's custom, which I don't think I've ever used, but you see how that works. So then you can do that, and then you can do file, export, and it'll export that image on. You gotta have the file, the folder selected and everything like that. But that's kind of like the nickel tour of how Inkscape works. You guys got any questions or comments, let me know. I'm going to try and go into a little more detail and explain how to draw different things in that text. Right now, it's just basically a real quick overview to show you some of the tools that are there.